The arrival of the invaders. The sky above Earth had never looked so dark. A large shadow slowly spread across the horizon, growing larger with every passing second. People all over the world stopped in their tracks, looking up in fear and awe. What was this? It wasn't a plane, and it wasn't a satellite either. It was something far bigger, something far more terrifying. The massive ship, if that's even what it was, didn't look like anything humanity had ever seen before. It was shaped like an enormous crescent moon, with strange, glowing symbols etched into its surface. The ship's metal surface reflected the sunlight, making it look almost alive, pulsating in the air. Its size was so immense that it seemed to swallow the sky itself. It hovered silently over Earth, casting a cold, unsettling shadow on the cities below. No one had seen it coming. The world had been preparing for all sorts of disasters, earthquakes, storms, even war. But nothing like this. No one was ready for the moment when the stars themselves would fall to Earth. In the heart of New York City, people were glued to their phones and televisions, watching in disbelief as the news reports flooded in. The government's emergency alerts flashed on every screen, telling everyone to stay indoors. The cities were locked down. Military forces were mobilized, and the world's leaders were summoned to urgent meetings. But what could they do? The invaders had made their presence known, and they weren't asking for peace. They had come to claim Earth. On the ground, panic spread quickly. People screamed, ran, and tried to make sense of the madness. Cars stopped in the middle of highways, their drivers unable to look away from the sight above. Children clung to their parents in fear, as families tried to figure out what to do next. It wasn't just the sight of the ship that terrified people, it was the message. Through a global broadcast, a deep, resonating voice boomed through every device, filling homes, streets, and buildings. The voice was neither human nor animal. It was alien, cold, and commanding. It spoke in a language no one understood at first. Then, after a long pause, it translated itself. "We are the HFY. We are the masters of the universe. Your world, your species, is now under our control. Bow down before us, or suffer the consequences." The voice didn't stop there. It continued, repeating the same message over and over again, as if to hammer the point home. You are weak. You will submit. Somehow, the sound of that voice was even more terrifying than the ship above. It felt as if the entire planet was being threatened by something so powerful, so ancient, that humans were nothing but ants in comparison. The words echoed in every corner of the world, uniting people through their fear. In the United States, the president was rushed to an underground facility for safety. Military leaders were called to discuss the next steps. But there were no answers. The ships were too large. The power they showed was too great. It was clear that humanity was not ready for this kind of threat. Among all this chaos stood a lone figure. The protagonist, a young man named Alex, watched from the rooftop of an old apartment building in downtown New York. His eyes were fixed on the ship, his mind racing with thoughts and questions. He didn't panic like the others. He wasn't sure why, but something deep inside told him that this wasn't the end. This wasn't the way it was going to go down. Alex wasn't just any regular person. He was part of a small, secret resistance group that had been watching the stars for years. They had predicted something like this might happen, but they didn't know when. They had gathered a few pieces of information about alien species, but nothing concrete. No one had ever expected the HFY to be so bold, so direct. And now, humanity had one chance to prove itself, or face total destruction. The voice from the ship continued to demand surrender. Bow down to us. Your obedience is the only thing that will save you. Alex clenched his fists. It was like the entire world was holding its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Would they surrender? Would the leaders fall in line? Would humanity give up so easily? In the midst of the chaos, Alex's thoughts turned to the one question everyone was asking. How could one word change everything? He knew there was a way. The Resistance had been working for years on a plan, though they hadn't yet revealed it to anyone. There were still too many unknowns. But Alex had something the rest didn't: intuition, a sense that this moment was important, that this was the start of something bigger, something no one had prepared for. As he watched the ship's eerie glow shine over the city, Alex made a decision. He would not stand by while humanity fell to its knees. He had a plan. Small, simple, but it might be the only chance Earth had left. The world continued to panic, but Alex was determined. He had no idea how or when it would happen, but he knew one thing for sure: that Exalthor had underestimated humanity. And that one word would be their downfall. The Exalthor's threat. The world was in chaos. Cities all over the planet stood still under the shadow of the Exalthor's ship, their immense power hanging over Earth like a storm waiting to break. For days, the alien voice continued to demand humanity's submission. There was no reply from the world's leaders. Not yet. They were all scrambling, trying to figure out what to do, how to deal with the impossible situation. The fear of the unknown gripped every person on Earth. In a heavily guarded facility deep beneath the White House, the President of the United States stood before a massive screen. The leaders of other nations were present through video calls, their faces pale and drawn with worry. The room was filled with tension, but no one spoke. Everyone waited for the same thing: the answer. The alien voice had not stopped. "Bow down to us. Accept your place under our rule. Your world is ours. Your species will kneel before the Exalthor. Resistance is useless." The words hung in the air like a chilling command, but the silence in the room was deafening. The leaders had no answers, only questions. What could they say to such an ultimatum? How could they negotiate with beings so far beyond human technology? The entire planet seemed to be on the brink of collapse. In the middle of the room, General Evans stood, looking grim. He had been in the military for decades, but even he had never seen anything like this. The Exalthor weren't like any enemy they had faced before. They weren't just strong, they were unstoppable. The sheer size of their ship, the power of their weapons, it was like nothing humanity had ever imagined. He turned to the President. "We can't fight them, Mr. President. We have no way of winning. We got fighter jets, missiles, all the weapons we've got. None of them will touch that ship." His voice was low, almost resigned. The President nodded grimly. "I know, but we can't just give up. We have to find a way to buy time, to think. We can't surrender, not without a fight." But in truth, there was little time left. Every day, the ship loomed larger in the sky, a constant reminder that humanity's future was hanging in the balance. The world's leaders had come to a grim realization. They couldn't stand against the Exalthor's power. They had no hope of winning in battle. "You will submit to us, or you will face the consequences." The voice boomed again, cutting through the quiet. "We will give you 1 week. After that, the cities of your planet will be reduced to ashes. Choose wisely." It was a simple message. The alien race had laid down the law. There was no room for negotiation. The time for diplomacy had passed. Humanity had to decide: surrender or face total annihilation. Across the world, people sat glued to their screens, hearts pounding in fear. Some believed it was all over. Humanity's final moments had arrived. Others still hoped that someone would come up with a solution, a way to stop the aliens before it was too late. But who could save them now? In a quiet corner of the world, in a small underground bunker, Alex watched the broadcast. His face was calm, but his mind was racing. The aliens were giving Earth a deadline. A week. It felt like the end, but Alex knew it wasn't. The Resistance had prepared for something like this, though no one could predict what the aliens would do next. But one thing was clear to Alex: humanity wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. He was part of a group that had been working on a plan for years, a plan that had remained secret until now. The Exalthor might be powerful, but they were not invincible. There had to be a weakness, a way to break their control. Alex had spent years studying alien technology, studying the stars, and learning as much as he could. And now, it was time to put all of that knowledge to use. He had one word, a word that could shatter the aliens' control if used in the right moment. As the broadcast ended and the leaders around the world debated what to do, Alex's mind made up. He couldn't just wait. He had to act. He quickly gathered a small group of resistance members. They had to move fast. The clock was ticking, and every second mattered. "It's not over," Alex muttered to himself. "We still have a chance." And with that, the resistance began making plans to deliver that one word, the word that could change everything. The word that could save humanity, or doom it forever. The hidden resistance. While the world's leaders scrambled to find answers, there were those who had been waiting for this moment. In the shadows, a small but determined group of people had been preparing for years. They were the resistance, ordinary men and women, but united by one belief: humanity would never surrender. Alex stood in a dimly lit room in an underground facility, far from the eyes of the world. The walls were lined with monitors, showing images of the Thor ship from every angle, its massive form dominating the sky. He had joined the resistance months earlier, but now it felt like everything they had worked for had come to this point. The moment of truth. The group was small, just a handful of people, but each one was crucial. They had studied the Thor, learned about their technology, their culture, their weaknesses. No one knew for sure if their plan would work, but Alex had faith. He had to. It was the only hope humanity had left. In the center of the room, the leader of the resistance, a woman named Alina, was going over their final plan. Her face was tired but determined. She knew this wasn't going to be easy. The world had already started to bend under the pressure of the Thor's demands. The president was talking about surrender, and most of the world's military forces were either preparing to fight or waiting for orders. There was no time to waste. "We have one shot at this," Alina said, her voice firm. "We don't know how they'll react to what we're planning. We don't even know if it'll work, but we have to try." Alex nodded. He had spent countless nights poring over ancient texts, looking for any clue that could give them an edge over the Thor. They had one thing that the aliens didn't expect: a connection to the past, something that could disrupt the Thor's control. It wasn't a weapon or a military strategy. It was something much simpler: knowledge. "The artifact," Alex said quietly. Alina turned to him, her expression unreadable. "Yes, the artifact," she replied. "We've traced it to a remote location. It's going to be dangerous, but it's the only lead we have. We need to get to it before the Thor realize what we're doing." The artifact was something ancient, possibly older than humanity itself. It was a relic from an unknown civilization, hidden away in a secret location, its true purpose a mystery. But Alex believed that it held the key to unlocking the power they needed to fight back. The group quickly gathered their gear. They knew this wasn't going to be easy. The Thor had already started sending search parties to monitor human activity, watching for any signs of rebellion. If they were discovered, the resistance would be wiped out in seconds. But Alex and the others had no choice. They couldn't just sit back and wait for humanity to surrender. They had to act. As Alex prepared to leave the underground base, he glanced back at the monitors. The Thor ship was still hovering in the sky, its massive form casting an oppressive shadow over the world. It seemed impossible that anyone could stand against such power, but Alex had seen the resilience of humans firsthand. They didn't give up easily. And as long as there was a chance, he would fight. "We leave in 10 minutes, Alina said, pulling him from his thoughts. "Are you ready?" Alex took a deep breath. The weight of what they were about to do hit him all at once. This wasn't just about saving the Earth. It was about proving that humanity had the will to survive, no matter what. He nodded firmly. "I'm ready." The group set out under the cover of darkness, moving quickly and quietly. They knew that Xalthor would be watching, so they had to be careful. Every step had to be planned. They couldn't afford any mistakes. As they traveled through remote forests and desolate landscapes, Alex's mind raced. The artifact they sought was believed to have been hidden by an ancient race, one that had long since vanished. Some believed it was a weapon, others a key to unlocking a power beyond imagination. No one knew for sure, but Alex had spent enough time studying the ancient texts to believe that it could disrupt the Xalthor's control over humanity. The journey wasn't easy. They had to cross through mountains, avoid Xalthor patrols, and navigate through dangerous terrain. But Alex couldn't stop now. The fate of the entire world depended on what they found. If they could just get to the artifact, they might have a chance to strike back. But time was running out. The Xalthor had given humanity a week. Only a few days remained. The power of one word. The resistance moved quickly. Each member of the group focused on their task. Alex and his team traveled in silence, always alert to the dangers around them. The journey was long and exhausting, but they couldn't afford to slow down. The Xalthor were not just watching from the sky. They were everywhere, and any slip-up could be their last. As they neared the location of the artifact, the tension in the air became almost unbearable. The ancient texts Alex had studied had hinted at the artifact's power, but he still wasn't sure what it would do once they found it. All they knew was that it had something to do with disrupting the Xalthor's control over humanity. Could it really work? Could it truly help them stand up to the alien invaders? The team finally arrived at the site, an ancient, crumbling temple hidden deep within a forest. The structure was old, older than anything Alex had ever seen, its stone walls covered in moss and vines. The air around it was thick with mystery, and a strange energy seemed to pulse from the very ground. "This is it," Elena said, her voice barely a whisper as she scanned the area. "Let's hope we're not too late." The group moved cautiously inside the temple, their footsteps echoing through the dark halls. The walls were adorned with strange symbols, some familiar, others completely alien. Alex studied them carefully, recognizing some of the markings from the texts he had studied. It was clear now that the artifact was more than just a weapon. It was a key to unlocking something far more important. As they reached the heart of the temple, they found it, the artifact. It was a small, intricately carved stone, resting on a pedestal at the center of the room. It seemed ordinary at first, but there was something about it that felt different, almost alive. A soft glow emanated from its surface, casting eerie shadows on the walls. Alex felt a rush of excitement mixed with fear. "This is it," Alex murmured, stepping forward. He could feel the weight of the moment, the weight of humanity's fate resting in his hands. Elena stepped forward as well, her eyes fixed on the artifact. "We need to get back to base. This thing could change everything." But just as Alex reached for the artifact, the air seemed to shift. A strange hum filled the room, and the floor beneath their feet trembled. The resistance members froze, looking around in confusion. Something wasn't right. Suddenly, the temple's entrance was blocked off by a powerful force. The walls seemed to pulse with energy, and Alex realized, too late, that they weren't alone. The Xalthor had found them. From the shadows, a figure stepped forward. A tall, imposing alien with dark, leathery skin and glowing eyes. The Xalthor leader, the one who had been making all the demands over the past week, now stood before them. "You are foolish," the alien said, its voice low and cold. "You think you can stand against us. You think one artifact can stop us. You are nothing." The resistance members stood their ground, but the fear was clear in their eyes. The leader's presence was overwhelming, and the power of the Xalthor was undeniable. But Alex didn't back down. This was the moment he had prepared for, the moment when humanity's survival depended on their ability to fight back. The alien raised its hand, and the power in the room intensified. The walls seemed to close in, and the resistance members struggled to keep their footing. "Give it up," the HFY leader commanded. "This planet is ours. You cannot stop us." Alex took a deep breath. He felt the weight of the artifact in his hands and the weight of the world on his shoulders. This was the moment. It was time for the one word. He turned to Elena and the others. "Get ready," he whispered. "This is our only chance." With that, Alex stepped forward, holding the artifact high. He spoke the word, one simple word that had been passed down through the generations of humanity. The word that had the power to break the HFY's hold. The word that could shatter their control. No. The air seemed to freeze. For a brief moment, everything went silent. The HFY leader stared at Alex, its eyes wide with disbelief. The energy in the room shifted once more, and the walls seemed to crack with a loud, deafening sound. The leader staggered back, unable to comprehend what had just happened. The power that had been so overwhelming just moments before began to unravel, like a string coming undone. "What? What have you done?" the alien leader hissed, confusion and anger in its voice. Alex felt a surge of energy ripple through him. The simple word had done something the HFY had never expected. It had disrupted their control over the world. Their technology was faltering. The power of their ship was weakening. In that one moment, Alex knew that humanity had just gained the upper hand. The HFY leader roared in fury, but it was too late. The artifact had done its job, and humanity's fight was far from over. The resistance had struck the first blow. The showdown. The HFY leader staggered back, its alien features twisted in disbelief and fury. The force that had filled the temple now seemed to ripple and collapse around them. The walls cracked, and the once overwhelming presence of the alien leader seemed to falter. For the first time since the HFY had arrived, Alex felt a glimmer of hope. They had done it. The word, simple, powerful, defiant, had disrupted the aliens' control. The atmosphere felt lighter, as if the planet itself had taken a deep breath. The energy from the artifact surged through Alex, amplifying his belief that humanity was far stronger than the HFY had ever imagined. "We are not your slaves," Alex declared, his voice steady and fierce, carrying across the now unstable temple. He could feel the resistance members rally behind him, their courage growing with every passing second. The HFY leader's confusion turned to rage. It bellowed in a language that sent chills down the resistance members' spines. "You dare defy us?" The leader's voice cracked like thunder, causing the ground to tremble beneath them. "We are the rulers of the universe. Your planet is nothing. You are nothing." But the power it once commanded was slipping from its grasp. The temple, the walls, even the very air around them seemed to fight against the HFY. Their technology, so advanced, now sputtered and flickered. Something was wrong. The HFY hadn't accounted for this. Humans had found a way to fight back, not with force, but with something more powerful. Will. Alex took a step forward, his gaze unwavering. The leader tried to summon more energy, but its efforts were futile. The resistance was stronger now, emboldened by what they had just witnessed. They had disrupted the HFY's grip, and now it was their turn to strike. The alien leader, now desperate, raised its hand to signal an attack, but before it could strike, the walls of the temple suddenly cracked open. The ceiling began to crumble, and dust filled the air. The HFY leader snarled, realizing the control was slipping beyond its reach. The once imposing presence it held over the humans now seemed fragile, cracked, like the very structure of the temple they stood in. In that brief moment of chaos, Alex seized the opportunity. He wasn't the strongest, he wasn't the most skilled, but he understood one thing. The HFY had underestimated humanity. They had thought they could dominate, break the spirit of the human race with a single order. They had failed to account for the one thing that made humanity different: its will to fight, to rise, to survive. "We won't bow to you," Alex said, his voice rising above the noise. "You wanted to control us. You wanted to destroy us, but we are stronger than you know. This planet belongs to us." The Excelsior leader's eyes flashed with fury. It was angry, but its power was fading. The artifact had worked, and the tide was turning. The resistance could feel it. Humanity's spirit was stronger than the alien technology. Alex felt the pull of something greater than fear now. It was the sense of freedom. The knowledge that they weren't alone, that they could stand against this alien empire and win. The alien leader growled, the frustration clear in its voice. "You will regret this." But as it raised its arm to strike, there was a loud, crashing sound. The force of the collapsing temple finally caught up with its Excelsior leader. A massive explosion of energy erupted, sending debris flying in all directions. For a moment, everything went black. When Alex regained his senses, he saw that the temple had collapsed around them. The walls had crumbled into rubble, and the Excelsior leader was nowhere to be seen. But the resistance had survived. They were still standing, and the artifact pulsed with a steady, powerful glow in Alex's hand. He turned to Elena, his eyes filled with a renewed sense of purpose. "We did it. We've got a chance now." Elena nodded. "It's only the beginning. We've struck the first blow, but the battle is far from over." Alex felt the weight of those words. They had made a huge step, but the war was just starting. The Excelsior had underestimated them, but they would come back stronger. They would come back angrier. But the resistance wasn't afraid anymore. They knew now that they could defeat the aliens, that humanity had the strength to rise up. The message was clear. No matter how powerful the invaders were, they could never break the human spirit. As they prepared to leave the ruins of the temple, Alex couldn't help but feel that the tide had truly turned. The Excelsior may have had the power to crush cities, but they didn't have what humanity had: the will to fight, the resilience to endure, and the courage to stand tall. The final victory. The resistance knew they had only one chance. They had shaken the Excelsior Empire to its core, but they were still far from defeating it. The alien forces were regrouping, reasserting their control over key military assets, and now the pressure was on the resistance to land the final blow. The Excelsior ship continued to hover in the sky, an ever-present reminder of their dominance over Earth. The once unshakable presence of the alien forces was now riddled with cracks. Thanks to the artifact, humanity had disrupted their communications, their technology, and their ability to coordinate, but there was still one final step. Humanity had to strike at the heart of their power, at the mothership itself. Alex and his team had spent days preparing. They had gathered intelligence, and they had one goal: disable the Excelsior ship, rendering it vulnerable. Without their mothership, the Excelsior would be crippled. But it wasn't going to be easy. Their enemies were relentless, and their ship was still heavily fortified. The plan was simple, but dangerous. The resistance would infiltrate the Excelsior ship using stealth, avoiding detection as they navigated through its complex systems. They would plant a series of explosive charges, targeting the weak points they had identified. Then, they would make their escape before the ship was destroyed. The resistance had never attempted anything of this scale before. The risks were high. If they failed, it would be the end of humanity's fight. The odds were against them, but for Alex and the others, there was no turning back. The night before the mission, Alex sat alone in a small room, staring at the artifact. It had been the key to their victory, the spark that had ignited the resistance. But now, it was only a symbol. The real victory would come from the courage and resilience of humanity. People like him, people who refused to bow to the invaders. "We've come this far," Alex whispered to himself. "We're not backing down now." The next morning, the team gathered one last time. Elena, as always, was calm and focused. "This is it," she said, her voice steady. "We've fought for this moment. We've made it this far, and now we finish what we started. Together." The team moved out. As they neared the location of the Excelsior ship, the tension in the air was palpable. Every step they took felt heavy, each move more critical than the last. They knew that once they infiltrated the ship, there would be no second chances. Inside the ship, the Xalthor were still reeling from their previous defeat. They had repaired some of their damaged systems, but they were far from fully recovered. The Resistance had used their advantage wisely. The Xalthor hadn't expected such a daring move. Humans had proven to be more resourceful and resilient than they had imagined. The group snuck inside the ship, avoiding detection with precision. The layout was alien, and every corridor seemed like a maze, but the Resistance had studied the ship's design carefully. They moved like shadows, slipping past the Xalthor guards and systems without being seen. When they finally reached the ship's central core, they planted the explosives in key areas. The countdown began. The charges were set to detonate at precisely the right moment, targeting the ship's energy source and communication systems. "We're done," Elena whispered, her voice tense. "Let's go." Now, the team moved quickly, retracing their steps through the ship. But as they neared the exit, alarms blared, and the ship's defenses activated. The Xalthor had detected them. The countdown was still ticking down, but they couldn't afford to be caught. "Go, go," Alex shouted, pushing his team forward. They ran, their hearts pounding in their chests. The ship's corridors seemed to stretch endlessly before them, but they couldn't slow down. Every moment counted. The sound of pursuit grew louder as the Xalthor soldiers closed in on them. Finally, they reached the exit. The team sprinted toward the escape pod, barely avoiding the blasts from the ship's defense systems. The Resistance members scrambled into the pod, sealing the hatch just as the ship shook violently. As they launched into the air, the ship's final explosion ripped through the Xalthor mothership. A brilliant burst of light erupted from the center of the ship, and the once mighty vessel crumpled in on itself, disintegrating into pieces. The shockwave from the blast sent their escape pod spiraling, but they managed to regain control, soaring away from the wreckage just in time. Alex looked out of the pod's window at the destruction. The Xalthor mothership, the symbol of their invincibility, was gone. The once dominant alien force was now broken, and humanity had proven that it could stand against them. "We did it," Elena said, her voice filled with disbelief and relief. "We're not done yet," Alex replied, his eyes focused on the horizon. "This is just the beginning." With the mothership destroyed, the Xalthor Empire was crippled, but the war was far from over. Humanity had won a decisive battle, but the invaders would not give up easily. However, Alex knew something now that he hadn't known before. Humanity had the strength to survive, to fight back, and to rise above. The Xalthor had underestimated them, and that mistake would cost them everything. The Resistance would continue to fight. The battle for Earth was just beginning, but one thing was clear: humanity would never bow down again.